Robert Bob Williams found the first origami crane in a strange place. It was lying on the hallway floor, right next to his nephew's bedroom door. A small paper bird, folded with precision, white, delicate, as if someone had deliberately left it there. Bob picked it up. He examined it curiously. He had no idea what it was, no idea where it had come from, and no idea that this small paper bird was about to change everything. Bob was 54 years old. He owned a chain of luxury hotels, 32 properties across Mexico, an empire built from the ground up, with sweat, with sacrifice, with sleepless nights. But all his money couldn't solve the problem. Living under his own roof, Sammy, his nephew, the son of his dead sister, the boy he'd adopted 4 years ago, the 16-year-old who washed his hands more than 100 times a day. Bob stared at the paper crane. Then he glanced at Sammy's closed bedroom door, always closed, always locked, always hiding a pain that Bob didn't know how to heal. Sammy's OCD had started 4 years earlier, the day he found his mother, dead in the kitchen. A sudden heart attack. Mary Ann was 42 years old, completely healthy. Or so everyone thought. Sammy was 12 when he found her, lying on the kitchen floor, her eyes open, her skin cold. Sammy ran to her. He touched her. He shook her. He screamed her name. But Mary Ann didn't respond. She would never respond. The paramedics said she died instantly, that she didn't suffer, that there was nothing anyone could have done. But Sammy didn't believe it. In his 12-year-old mind, an idea took hold, an idea that became an obsession that became a prison. If I had washed my hands before touching her, that was the idea. If my hands had been clean, maybe she would have lived. Maybe the contamination from my hands and killed her. Maybe it was my fault. The psychiatrists called it magical thinking, a common characteristic of childhood OCD, the belief that certain rituals can prevent disasters, the belief that if you don't do something specific, something terrible will happen. Sammy believed his hands were contaminated, that everything he touched became contaminated, that the only way to be safe was to wash. Once, 10 times, 100 times. It was never enough. Bob had spent a fortune trying to help him. 4 different psychiatrists, 3 types of medication, 2 stays in specialized clinics, cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy, hypnosis. Nothing worked. Sammy's OCD only got worse. His hands were the proof. Bob had seen them. Red, cracked, bleeding. The skin so damaged. It looked burned. Sammy wore gloves all the time. Not to protect himself from the world, but to hide the destruction. Bob sighed. He looked at the paper crane again. "Where did you come from?" he asked aloud, as if the bird could answer. That's when he heard something. A sound coming from the utility room. At the end of the hallway, voices. 2 voices. One he recognized, Connie's, the housekeeper, and another, that he hadn't heard in a long time, Sammy's, laughing. Bob froze. He couldn't remember the last time he'd heard Sammy laugh. Maybe never. Not since Mary Ann's death. He approached the utility room, silently. The door was ajar. A yellow light escaped into the dark hallway. Bob peeked through the crack, and what he saw left him speechless. Sammy was sitting in a chair, without gloves, his bare hands exposed, the damaged hands, the hands he usually hid from the world, and he was folding paper, slowly, carefully, with a concentration that Bob had never seen in him. Across from him, Connie, the 42-year-old woman, who had been cleaning his house for 8 years, quiet, discreet, an employee that Bob barely noticed. Connie was guiding Sammy's hands, showing each fold, each crease, each step, to turn a simple square of paper into something beautiful. "That's it, sweetie," Connie said. Her voice was soft and maternal. "Fold it here, slowly. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect." Sammy followed the instructions. His hands trembled, but they didn't stop. They didn't go to the sink. They didn't reach for soap. They were busy, creating. Bob looked at the walls of the small utility room, and then he saw them. Origami cranes, dozens of them, hanging from threads and are taped to the wall of all colors: white, blue, red, green, yellow. An army of paper birds, as if someone had built a secret sanctuary, a place where Sammy's illness didn't exist, a place where his hands could do something more than destroy themselves. Bob felt a lump in his throat. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't understand how a housekeeper was achieving what 4 psychiatrists hadn't been able to do, but what he saw was undeniable. Sammy was calm. Sammy was focused. Sammy was present. For the first time in 4 years. Connie looked up. Her eyes met Bob's through the crack, and the world stopped. "Mr. Williams." Connie's voice was barely a whisper, full of fear, full of guilt, as if she had been caught doing something terrible. Sammy turned. He saw his uncle in the doorway, and his entire body tensed. His hands began to tremble, more violently than before. The calm disappeared from his eyes. The fear returned. "Uncle, Bob opened the door completely. The light from the hallway flooded the utility room, illuminating the origami cranes, illuminating Connie, illuminating Sammy with his bare, scarred hands. "What's going on here?" Bob asked. His voice sounded harsher than he intended. It was the tone of a businessman, the tone of a man used to controlling everything, the tone of someone who didn't understand what he was seeing. Sammy jumped up. His eyes searched for the sink, the soap, the water. He needed to wash. He needed to feel clean. The moment of peace was over. "Wait." Connie stood up too. She placed herself between Sammy and the sink. "You don't need to wash, honey. Your hands are fine." Sammy shook his head. "No. They're not okay. They're dirty. I touched the paper, touched so many things. I need to." Connie gently took Sammy's hands, so soothingly, so carefully. "Look at them, Sammy. They're not dirty. They're full of art. Look what you created." She pointed to the origami crane that Sammy had been folding. It was almost finished. Just a few more folds were needed. Sammy stared at the bird. Then he looked at his hands, the hands he hated, the hands that betrayed him, the hands that were never clean enough. But this time, there was something different. This time, his hands had created something beautiful, something that didn't require destruction. Mr. Williams watched in silence. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do. He'd come in expecting to find something wrong, something to explain, something to punish. But what he'd found was something completely different. It was hope. "Connie," Mr. Williams said. His voice was softer now. "I want you to explain to me. What's going on?" Connie nodded. She guided Sammy back to the chair, handing him the unfinished crane. "Finish this while I talk with your uncle. You can do it." Sammy looked at the paper. Then he looked at Connie. There was fear in his eyes, but there was something else there too. Trust. "Okay," Sammy said softly, and went back to folding. Connie walked over to Mr. Williams. She led him out of the utility room, closed the door carefully, and in the dim hallway of the mansion, she began to tell a story that would change everything. "Mr. Williams, I have to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone in this house. Something about my past." Mr. Williams listened. He didn't interrupt. Something told him that what he was about to hear was important. "I had a son," Connie said, her voice trembling. "His name was Mikey. He was 14 years old when he passed." Mr. Williams felt a chill. He didn't know that Connie had lost a son. In 8 years of working for him, she'd never mentioned it. "Mikey had OCD," Connie continued. "Like Sammy, but different. He didn't wash his hands. He counted. Everything. Steps, tiles, words if he didn't count. He believed something bad would happen." Mr. Williams thought about Sammy, about his rituals, about his need to wash, about the invisible prison that held him captive. It was the same. Different manifestation, but the same illness. "I tried everything to help him," Connie said. "Doctors, medicines, prayers. Nothing worked. Until one day, so by accident, I taught him how to make origami." "Origami?" Mr. Williams asked. "Like the paper cranes." Connie nodded. "My mother taught me when I was a little girl, back in Oklahoma. She said that each fold was a prayer, that when you folded papers, you were folding your thoughts too, ordering them, calming them." Mr. Williams began to understand. "You taught it to Mikey." "Yes, and something incredible happened. While he was folding paper, he stopped counting. His hands were so busy creating that his mind didn't have time for the rituals. It was like origami gave him another obsession, a healthy obsession. And it worked." Connie lowered her gaze. There was pain in her eyes. A pain that Mr. Williams recognized, the pain of a parent who has lost a child. It was working. Mikey was improving. He hadn't had any severe rituals in 3 months. We were going to be able to enroll him in school again. Everything was going to be okay. What happened? Connie wiped away a tear. Car accident. Drunk driver. Mikey was with his dad, going to buy more origami paper. Neither of them made it. Mr. Williams felt the air escape his lungs. Connie had lost her husband and her son on the same day because of a stupid accident while they were going to buy paper. "I'm so sorry," Mr. Williams said. The words sounded empty, insufficient, but they were all he had. Connie nodded. "That was 5 years ago. I came to work here because I needed to keep busy. I needed to not think, and it worked. For 4 years. I didn't think about origami, I didn't think about Mikey, I just worked, cleaned, cooked, existed. And then you saw Sammy," Mr. Williams said. Connie raised her eyes. They were filled with tears, but also with something else. Determination. The first time I saw his hands, I almost cried. They were just like Mikey's after he'd been counting for hours. Red, damaged, bleeding. And I knew I had to do something, that I couldn't let another kid suffer, when I knew something that could help. "When did you start?" 3 months ago. One day. Sammy was in the hallway, crying. His hands were bleeding so much that the blood was dripping onto the floor. I was cleaning. I saw him. And something inside me broke. Connie paused. The memory was painful, but necessary. I went to him. I offered him a towel for his hands, and he looked at me with those sad eyes, so lost, so much like Mikey's. And I said, "Sweetie, you wanted me to teach you to do something with those hands?" What did he say? He didn't say anything. He just followed me to the utility room. I gave him a piece of paper. I showed him how to fold it, and for 10 minutes he didn't go to the bathroom. 10 minutes. It was a record in years. Mr. Williams looked at the closed door of the utility room. Behind it, his nephew was folding paper, without washing, without suffering, without destroying himself, for the first time in years. "Why didn't you tell me?" Mr. Williams asked. His voice wasn't angry. It was confused, with pain, with guilt, for not noticing what was happening under his own roof. "Because I didn't know if it was going to work," Connie answered. "And because I was afraid you'd fire me for sticking my nose where it doesn't belong." Mr. Williams shook his head. "I would never fire you for helping Sammy. Never." Connie smiled. It was a sad smile, but genuine. I know that now, but I didn't know it then. I just knew I had to try, that I couldn't watch another child suffer without doing something. Mr. Williams remained silent for a moment, processing everything he'd heard. Connie had lost a son with OCD, had found a way to help him, and before she could see him recover, she'd lost him forever. And now, she was using that knowledge to help Sammy, as if fate had given her a second chance, as if Mikey had guided her here. "Can I see?" Mr. Williams asked. "I want to see what you've done." Connie nodded. She opened the door to the utility room. Sammy was still there, sitting in the chair, with the finished crane in his hands and a smile that Mr. Williams hadn't seen in years. "I finished it, Connie. Look." Sammy held up the paper bird. It was beautiful, not perfect, but beautiful. The wings a little uneven, his neck slightly crooked, but complete, made by hands that usually only destroyed things. Bob Williams felt something break inside him, something he'd kept buried for years. A memory, a pain, a truth he'd never shared with anyone. Bob Williams had a secret he'd guarded for 40 years, a secret not even his wife Lucy knew. When Bob was 14, he'd suffered too, not like Sammy, not as severe, but enough to understand. Bob's OCD had started after his father's death, a heart attack, just like his sister, Mary Ann, years later. Apparently, heart disease ran in the family, and so did OCD. Bob didn't wash his hands. Bob checked things: locks, stoves, windows, light switches. He had to check everything 3 times before he could move on. If he didn't check 3 times, something bad was going to happen. If he didn't check 3 times, someone was going to die, like his father who had died while Bob was sleeping, like his father, who maybe, just maybe, would have survived if Bob had checked that everything was okay. The magical thinking, the same trap Sammy had fallen into. Bob never sought help. In his generation, in his family, mental illness was shameful. Weakness, something you overcame with willpower. So Bob forced himself to stop. He obliged himself to check only once, then not at all, and it worked. More or less. The rituals never completely disappeared. They just became smaller, more discreet, easier to hide. Even now at 54, Bob still checked certain things. 3 times. The safe deposit box door, important contracts, the car insurance, small rituals that no one noticed. Except Connie. Connie had noticed. In 8 years of working in that house, she'd seen the patterns. She'd seen how Bob checked the study door 3 times before going to bed. She'd seen how he tapped the documents 3 times before putting them away. She'd seen the small rituals he thought were invisible, but she'd never said anything. Until now. Bob looked at Sammy with the origami crane in his hands and felt something he hadn't felt in years: recognition. It was like seeing himself in a mirror that showed the boy he'd been. The boy who had suffered alone. The boy who had never had anyone who understood him. "Can I sit down?" Bob asked. His voice was different, softer, more vulnerable. Sammy looked at him in surprise. His uncle never asked permission. His uncle gave orders. "Sure." Bob sat next to his nephew. He looked at the origami cranes hanging on the walls. "How many have you made?" 63, Sammy replied, in 3 months. Bob nodded. "They're beautiful." Sammy lowered his gaze. "They're not perfect. Some are crooked. But they're made, and that's what matters." Sammy looked at his uncle. There was confusion in his eyes. His uncle never talked like this. His uncle talked about results, about perfection, about doing things right or not doing them at all. "Uncle Bob, Why are you here? Bob sighed. Because I have to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Connie stayed silent in the corner of the room. She knew what was coming. She'd seen it in Bob's eyes when he came in. The recognition, the connection. The moment when a man sees his own struggle reflected in someone else. When I was your age, I suffered too, Bob said. Sammy frowned. What do you mean? Bob looked at his own hands. The hands of a businessman. Hands that signed million-dollar contracts. Hands that everyone respected. Hands that hid invisible scars. I didn't wash my hands. I checked things. Locks, stoves, windows. I had to check everything 3 times or I felt like something bad was going to happen. Sammy looked at him with wide eyes. You. Me. The millionaire. The hotel owner. The man everyone thinks has everything under control. I had OCD too. Sammy couldn't believe it. His uncle had always seemed so strong, so confident, so perfect. But you overcame it, Sammy said. You don't have it anymore. Bob shook his head. That's where you're wrong. I didn't overcome it. I hide it. I still check things 3 times. I still have that voice in my head that tells me something bad is going to happen if I don't do the ritual. The difference is, I learned to ignore it most of the time, but it never disappeared. Sammy started to cry. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief, of finally being seen, of finally not being alone. I thought I was the only one, Sammy whispered. I thought I was crazy. You're not crazy, Bob said. You have a disease, a real disease, like diabetes or asthma. It's not your fault, it's not weakness, it's brain chemistry, and it can be treated. But the medication doesn't work. Medication isn't the only option. Bob looked at Connie. Apparently, origami is another. Connie smiled. Origami isn't the cure. It's a tool. A way to keep your hands busy while your mind learns to calm down. It's like giving your brain something to focus on, other than fear. Bob nodded. He understood now. Origami was a ritual, but a healthy ritual. A ritual that created, instead of destroyed. A ritual that had a defined end, different from washing hands, which never seemed enough. I want to learn, Bob said. Connie and Sammy looked at him in surprise. You want to learn origami? Sammy asked. Yes, I want to understand what you're doing. I want to be part of your recovery. And maybe, just maybe, I want to face something I've been hiding my whole life. Connie took a piece of paper from the box. A blue square. The same color as the Oaxaca sky where she had grown up. She gave it to Bob. Start with the crane. It's the most basic and the most meaningful. Why? Bob asked. Because there's a Japanese legend, Sammy said. Connie told me. If you make 1,000 origami cranes, you can make a wish, and it will come true. Bob looked at the blue paper in his hands. 1,000 cranes it was a lot. It was a commitment. It was exactly what they needed. Then let's make 1,000, Bob said. The 3 of us, together. Sammy smiled, a smile that Bob hadn't seen in 4 years. A smile of hope. The following weeks were different. Every night, after Bob got home from work, he went to the utility room. Connie was waiting for him with paper. Sammy was waiting with instructions. The millionaire who ran 32 hotels was learning to fold origami cranes. And he was terrible at it. His first cranes were disasters. Broken wings, twisted necks, deformed bodies. But Connie never made fun of him. And Sammy never criticized. They just kept going. Fold after fold, crane after crane. The ritual began to expand. It wasn't just in the utility room anymore. Now they were doing origami in the living room, in the dining room, in the garden. Robert's wife, Lucy, found them one afternoon, the three of them sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by colored paper, folding in silence. "What are you guys doing?" Lucy asked. Her voice held a tone of confusion and maybe a little jealousy. "Origami," Robert replied. "Want to learn?" Lucy looked at her husband, at the man who never had time for anything but work, the man who was always busy, the man who was now sitting on the floor folding paper. "Sure," Lucy said, and she sat down next to them. Connie gave her a pink piece of paper and started to teach her. The fourth member had joined. The cranes multiplied. 63 became 100. 100 became 200. 200 became 300. Each crane had a date written on its wing. Each crane represented a day that Sammy hadn't washed his hands 100 times, because that's what was happening. Sammy was recovering, not overnight, not miraculously, but steadily, little by little. The first week of origami, Sammy washed his hands 90 times. The second week, 80. The third, 70. By the second month, he was down to 40. His hands began to heal. The cracked skin started to close. The angry red turned to pale pink. The scars were still there. They would always be there. But they weren't open wounds anymore. They were reminders of what he had overcome. Sammy's psychiatrist couldn't believe it. Dr. Fernando Castillo had treated Sammy for 3 years. He had tried everything in his arsenal: medication, therapy, exposure techniques. Nothing had worked as well as this. "What changed?" Dr. Castillo asked in a consultation. Sammy looked at his uncle. Robert looked at Connie. Connie looked at her hands. "I found something to focus on," Sammy said. "Something my hands can do besides wash." Dr. Castillo nodded. "Occupational therapy. One of the oldest techniques. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." "It's not just the origami," Sammy said. "It's Connie and my uncle, and Aunt Lucy. It's having people who understand, who don't look at me like I'm crazy, who support me." Dr. Castillo looked at the 3 adults in the room, the millionaire, the housekeeper, the wife, 3 people who had nothing in common, except a teenager with damaged hands and a broken heart. "What you guys are doing is more valuable than any medication," said the doctor. "Human connection, feeling seen, not being alone. That's what really heals." Robert thought about his own adolescence, about the years he had spent alone with his OCD, with no one who understood, with no one to support him. He had survived. But at what cost? How many years of unnecessary suffering? "Sammy has something I never had," Robert said. "He has someone who knows exactly what he's going through." He looked at Connie, the housekeeper who had lost her son, the woman who had used her pain to save another, the silent heroine that no one had noticed in 8 years. Connie lowered her gaze. "I'm not a heroine, Mr. Williams. I'm just a mother who couldn't save her son, and who found another chance to make things right." Dr. Castillo leaned forward. "Connie, can I ask you a question?" "Sure. What happened to your son?" Connie closed her eyes. The memory was still painful. It always would be. Little Mikey had OCD, like Sammy, but he counted instead of washing. The origami was helping him. He was getting better. He was going back to school. Everything was going to be okay. Connie paused. Tears began to fall. But a drunk driver changed everything. Mikey and his dad were going to buy more origami paper. A truck ran a red light. Neither of them survived. The office fell silent. Sammy stood up. He crossed the room and hugged Connie. It was the first time Sammy had touched someone voluntarily in years. It was the first time he wasn't afraid of contaminating someone. It was the first time his hands were embracing instead of hiding. "Thank you," Sammy whispered, "for teaching me, for sharing Mikey with me, for not giving up." Connie cried harder, but it was a different cry, not of pain, of healing. Thank you, sweetie, for giving me another chance, for letting me believe that Mikey didn't die in vain. Robert and Lucy watched the scene. Two broken people embracing. Two people who had found what they needed in each other. A mother without a son without a mother. Two souls that destiny had united. Robert took his wife's hand. For the first time in years, he felt like everything was going to be all right. For the first time in years, he believed that Sammy had a future. For the first time in years, he saw light at the end of the tunnel. But recovery is never linear. And the hardest test was yet to come. The anniversary of Mary Ann's death arrived without warning. November 4th, the day Robert's sister had died, the day Sammy's mother had ceased to exist, the day it had all started. Sammy woke up that morning knowing something was wrong. He felt it in his chest, a pressure, a fear, a darkness that he thought he had left behind. He looked at his hands, the hands that had healed, the hands that had created hundreds of origami cranes, the hands that had learned to be more than instruments of destruction. And suddenly, he saw them as dirty, contaminated, covered in an invisible grime that only he could see. "No," Sammy whispered. "Not again." But the OCD didn't listen. The OCD didn't negotiate. The OCD only demanded. "Wash yourself," said the voice in his head. "Wash yourself or something bad is going to happen. Wash yourself or someone is going to die. Wash yourself like you should have that day." Sammy ran to the bathroom, so he turned on the faucet and started to scrub in once, twice, 10 times, 20 times. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. The soap ran out. Sammy used shampoo. The shampoo ran out too. He grabbed the conditioner. Anything. Anything that could clean. Anything that could make his hands feel okay. But they didn't feel okay. They never felt okay. Tears streamed down his face as he scrubbed. The skin on his hands, which he'd worked so hard to heal, began to redden. The scars split open. Blood appeared, mixed with the water, mixed with the soap, mixed with the pain. Connie found him an hour later. She was looking for him. It was breakfast time. Time for their morning origami session. Time for the healthy ritual they had built together. But what she found was the old ritual, the destructive ritual, the ritual she thought they'd defeated. Sammy was sitting on the bathroom floor, his hands raw, blood dripping onto the tiles, his eyes empty, lost. Just like 4 months ago. Before the origami. Before everything. "Sweetie, what happened?" Connie knelt beside him. She gently took his hands. The hands that had created paper cranes. The hands that were now destroyed again. "Today's the day," Sammy whispered. "Today my mom died, and I couldn't save her. Because my hands were dirty. Because I didn't wash them. Because I was a bad son." Connie felt her heart break. She knew that voice. The voice of OCD. The voice that convinced him of impossible things. The voice that Mikey had heard too. "That's not true, honey. Your hands didn't kill your mum. Her heart killed her. A sick heart that no one knew she had." Sammy shook his head. "If I had washed my hands, if I had been clean, maybe she'd still be alive. Listen to me. Listen to me." Connie cupped Sammy's face in her hands. She forced him to look at her. "Your mom died of a heart attack. It was instantaneous. There was nothing you could do. Nothing anyone could do. It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault." Sammy started to cry. "But it's been months of effort. Months of getting better. And in one day. I destroyed everything. Look at my hands. They're worse than ever." "One bad day doesn't destroy months of work," Connie said. "A stumble isn't a fall, and a relapse doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human. But the origami didn't work. I'm still sick. I'm still broken. Connie took one of his bloodied hands. She held it carefully. Look at these hands, Imo. Yes, they're damaged. Yes, you had a relapse, but you know what I see, Ta? I see hands that created 300 origami cranes. I see hands that healed for months. I see hands that stumbled today, but can get back up tomorrow. Sammy looked at her. There was so much hopelessness in his eyes. So much darkness. How do I do it? He asked. How do I get up after this? One crane at a time, Connie said. Just like you started. One fold at a time. One breath at a time. One moment at a time. But my hands are destroyed. I can't fold paper like this. Then we'll wait. We'll bandage your hands we'll let them heal. And when they're ready, we'll start again. Because that's what we do. We fall and we get up, again and again and again. Connie took her cell phone from her pocket. She called Bob. Mr. Williams, I need you to come home. It's Sammy. He had a relapse. Bob arrived in 20 minutes. He left an important meeting. He cancelled 3 appointments. He drove as fast as he could. Because nothing was more important than his nephew. Nothing was more important than that second chance. When he got to the bathroom, he saw Sammy on the floor. He saw the bleeding hands. He saw all the progress destroyed. And he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Panic. The same panic he felt when he was a teenager. When his rituals didn't work. When fear consumed him. Bob knelt next to Sammy. He hugged him. He held him. And for the first time in his life, he spoke of his own pain. I've had days like this too, Bob whispered. Days where all the progress seems to disappear. Days where the voice comes back stronger than ever. Days where I want to check everything 3 times, 10 times, 100 times. Sammy looked up. You too? Me too. OCD doesn't disappear, Sammy. It's not like the flu that you get over and that's it. It's a condition that we learn to manage. Some days are easy. Other days are impossible. But the important thing is not to give up. But I destroyed everything. Months of work, hundreds of cranes. The cranes are still there, huh? Bob said. Hanging in the utility room, hanging in your room. Each one representing a day that you made it through. This relapse doesn't erase those days. It just means that today was hard. And tomorrow we'll try again. And what if tomorrow is hard too? Then we'll face it too. Together. The 3 of us. Bob looked at Connie. The woman who had lost everything and still found the strength to help others. The woman who had seen in Sammy what no one else had seen. The woman who had changed everything. Together, Connie repeated. Always together. The next few days were tough. Sammy's hands were so damaged that he couldn't fold paper. He couldn't do anything. Just wait for them to heal. But Connie and Bob didn't leave him alone. Every morning they sat with him, not to do origami, just to be there, to keep him company, to remind him that he wasn't alone. Lucy joined in too, and Dr. Castillo visited them twice a week. Sammy had an army of support, an army that wasn't going to give up. 2 weeks later, Sammy's hands began to heal. Again. The wounds closed, the scars formed. New scars over old scars. A map of his battle. A reminder of everything he had faced. Can I try? Sammy asked one morning. He looked at the box of paper with the eyes of a child, with eyes of hope, with the eyes of someone who wanted to believe. Connie gave him a piece of paper, green, the color of new beginnings. Whenever you're ready, sweetie. Sammy took the paper. His hands were trembling, not from fear, from anticipation. He began to fold, slowly, carefully. Each crease was a victory. Each fold was a declaration. I'm here. I'm still fighting. I'm not giving up. The crane was crooked, imperfect, but complete. I did it, Sammy said. Tears streamed down his face, but they were tears of joy. You did it, Connie said. Crane number 301. Bob took the crane from Sammy's hands. He looked at it carefully. This one is special, Bob said. This one represents the time you fell and got back up. This one represents the strength that's inside you. This one represents everything you're capable of overcoming. Robert wrote something on the wing of the origami crane. A date and a word. November 18th. Resurrection. I like it, Sammy said. It's perfect. Nothing is perfect, Robert said. But everything can be meaningful. The origami cranes kept multiplying. 301 became 400, 400 into 500, 500 into 600. The goal of 1,000 was getting closer, but more important than the number was what it represented. Each crane was a day of struggle. Each crane was a small victory. Each crane was proof that recovery was possible. Sammy went back to school, first part-time, then full-time. He had friends again. He had a life again. He had a future again. His hands still had scars. They always would. But now, they also had calluses. Calluses from folding paper. Calluses from creating instead of destroying. One afternoon, Sammy came home with news. Uncle Bob, Connie, I have to tell you something. They were in the garden, making origami like every afternoon, a ritual that was as natural as breathing. What's up, sweetie? Connie asked. There's a competition at school, an art competition, and I want to participate. Robert smiled. That's wonderful. What are you going to present? Sammy hesitated for a moment. Then he took something out of his backpack. It was an origami crane, but different from the others. This one was enormous, the size of a soccer ball, made with hundreds of small papers glued together. A crane made of cranes. It's called 1,000 Hopes, Sammy said. Each small paper represents a struggle, a relapse, a new beginning. Together, they form something bigger, something beautiful, something that shows that from broken pieces, something whole can emerge. Connie started to cry, not from sadness, from pride, from love, from seeing that destroyed boy become an artist. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Connie said. Mikey would be so proud. Sammy took Connie's hand. I did it for him too, for Mikey, because he started this, because his struggle made mine possible. Robert looked at the sculpture. His nephew had created a work of art, with hands that had only destroyed before, with a heart that had only suffered before, with a mind that had been a prisoner. You're going to win, Robert said. And if you don't win, it doesn't matter. You've already won something more important. What? Your life, your freedom, your future. Sammy smiled, a smile that Robert had waited to see for 4 years, a smile that was worth more than any prize, a smile that meant all the pain had been worth it. The art competition was a month later. Sammy was nervous, not about the judges, not about the audience, about his hands. What if they start trembling? What if I need to wash them? What if I have a relapse in front of everyone? Connie noticed. She always noticed. Sweetie, how are you feeling? Scared, Sammy admitted. What if everything goes wrong? What if everything goes right? Sammy looked at her. He hadn't thought about that possibility. He was so focused on the fear that he had forgotten the hope. You're right, Sammy said. What if everything goes right? The school auditorium was full. Parents, teachers, students, all admiring the works of art, paintings, sculptures, photographs, and in the center, Sammy's piece, 1,000 Hopes, the giant crane made of 1,000 small cranes, each with a date, each with a word, each representing a moment in Sammy's battle. People stopped in front of the sculpture. They looked at it in awe. They read the words on the small papers, hope, Fear, fall, resurrection, love, family, origami. Each word told a story. Together. They told the story of a teenager who had learned to live. Robert was standing next to the sculpture, with Lucy by his side, with Connie behind him. The three of them watching Sammy receive congratulations, hugs, tears, applause. "We did it," Connie whispered. "We all did it." Robert took her hand. A simple gesture, but meaningful. "No. You did it. You had the courage to try when I had lost hope. You saw something in Sammy that I couldn't see, and you saved him." "I didn't save him," Connie said. "I accompanied him. He saved himself. I just showed him that there was another way." Robert shook his head. "Without you, Sammy would be in a clinic, or worse. You changed everything, Connie. You changed us all." Connie looked at the sculpture. The giant crane shone under the lights of the auditorium, like a paper phoenix, like a symbol of everything that is possible when someone decides not to give up. "Mikey would have been proud," Connie said. "He'd be happy to know that his story helped someone else." Robert looked at her. For the first time in 8 years, he saw her, not as the housekeeper, as a person, as a hero, as the woman who had saved his nephew with paper birds. "Connie, I want to offer you something." Connie looked at him with curiosity. "What is it?" "A different job, no longer as a housekeeper. I want you to work in one of my hotels, in the wellness area, teaching origami to guests, to people who need it, sharing what you know." Connie couldn't believe it. "Mr. Williams, I don't have any education. I don't have any certifications. I only know how to fold paper." "Sometimes, that's all you need," Robert said. "Sometimes. The best therapy doesn't come from a diploma. It comes from someone who has suffered, who has lost, who has found a way to move forward. And that, Connie, you don't learn in any university." Connie looked at Sammy. The teenager was surrounded by classmates, laughing, talking, being normal, being happy. "I accept," Connie said. "I accept with one condition, which is that we continue making origami together, the four of us. Every week, no matter how busy we are, no matter anything else." Robert smiled. That condition was already included. The judges announced the winners an hour later. 3rd place for an oil painting, 2nd place for a clay sculpture, and 1st place, the presenter paused dramatically, for 1,000 Hopes, by Sammy Williams. The auditorium erupted in applause. Sammy froze. He couldn't move, yet he couldn't believe it. He had won. His damaged hands, his scarred hands, his hands that had created 100 times to destroy one, had won. "Go, sweetie," Connie said. "Go receive your award." Sammy walked towards the stage. Each step was a victory. Each step was a declaration. "I'm here. I survived. And this is what I can do." When Sammy reached the podium, the host handed him a microphone. "Want to say a few words, Sammy?" Sammy looked out at the audience. He saw Bob. He saw Lucy. He saw Connie. The 3 people who had believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. "This piece, it's not just mine," Sammy said, his voice trembling slightly. "It belongs to everyone who helped me create it. To my Uncle Bob, who shared his own struggle. To my Aunt Lucy, who learned to fold paper just to support me. And to Connie, the woman who taught me that my hands could create instead of destroy." Sammy paused. Tears were starting to well up in his eyes. "I have OCD, an obsessive-compulsive disorder. For 4 years I washed my hands over 100 times a day. My hands bled. My life was shattered. And no medication, no therapy. Nothing worked." The auditorium was completely silent. everyone listening, everyone learning. Until Connie taught me origami. It's not magic. It's not a cure. It's a tool, a way to give my mind something to focus on, other than fear. Each origami crane in this sculpture represents a day I made it through, a day I chose to create, instead of destroy. A day I decided to keep fighting. Sammy held up the trophy. This is for everyone who struggles against their own mind, for everyone who feels like they're alone, for everyone who believes there's no hope. There is, there always is. Sometimes it comes in the form of a paper bird. Sometimes it comes in the form of someone who believes in you, when you can't believe in yourself. The auditorium exploded in applause again, louder than before, longer than before, like a recognition, not just of the artwork, but of the artist, of the survivor, of the warrior. Bob was crying. He didn't care who saw him. He didn't care that he was the millionaire who never showed emotion. His nephew had won something more than a prize. He had won his life. 2 years later, everything had changed. Sammy was 18 years old, about to start college. He would be studying art and psychology. He wanted to help others like him. He wanted to be the bridge between science and creativity. He wanted to prove that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. His OCD hadn't disappeared. It never would, but it was under control. He no longer washed his hands 100 times a day, 10, sometimes less. And when the anxiety rose, when the voice came back stronger, he knew what to do. He would take a piece of paper and start folding, one crane at a time. Connie was no longer a housekeeper. Now, she was the director of the wellness program at the Hotel Villanueva Monterrey. She taught origami to guests, to employees, to anyone who wanted to learn. She had trained 10 more instructors. The program had expanded to 5 hotels and had changed hundreds of lives. But every Sunday, without fail, Connie went to the Williams house. She sat with Bob, Lucy, and Sammy, and they made origami together, a sacred ritual, a family tradition, a reminder of everything they had built. The 1,000th crane was completed on one of those Sunday afternoons. Sammy made it, with hands that barely had any scars left, with hands that had healed so many times that they had lost count, with hands that now knew how to create beautiful things. "I did it," Sammy said softly. 1,000 cranes. "According to legend, you can now make a wish," Connie said gently. "What do you wish for, sweetie?" Sammy looked at his family, at his Uncle Bob, who had shared his secret, at his Aunt Lucy, who had learned to fold paper out of love, at Connie, who had seen in him what no one else saw. "I already have it," Sammy said, his voice thick with emotion. "My wish has already come true," Connie smiled. "And what was that? Not to be alone, to have people who understood me, who supported me, who believed in me, when I couldn't believe in myself. That was my wish, and it came true 2 years ago, when you gave me that first piece of paper." Connie started to cry, not from sadness, from completeness. "Little Mikey guided me to you," Connie whispered. "I'm sure of it. He knew I needed another chance, and he knew you needed someone who understood. He brought us together, from wherever he is. He brought us together." Sammy took Connie's hand. "Then thank you to him too, to Mikey, for lending us his mom, for sharing his story, for making all of this possible." Bob looked at the scene, his nephew and his former housekeeper, 2 people who had found in each other what they needed: a mother without a son without a mother. Together, they had healed. "If this story has taught you anything, I want you to remember this," Sammy said, looking at everyone. "OCD isn't cured with willpower. It isn't cured with shame. It isn't cured by hiding. It's managed with tools, with support, with people who understand. And sometimes, that tool is as simple as a folded piece of paper. Bob nodded. I spent 40 years hiding my OCD, thinking it was weakness, thinking that no one could know. And you know what? I was wrong. Talking about it was the best thing I could do, not just for Sammy, but for me. Connie took one more piece of paper from the box. The last piece of paper. Mr. Williams, we've never talked about this, but I knew about your OCD for years. Bob looked at her in surprise. How? I saw you check the doors 3 times, touch the documents 3 times, little rituals that you thought were invisible, but I saw them. Because I had seen the same rituals in Mikey, and when I saw Sammy, I knew it was in the family. Bob fell silent. Connie had known his secret for years, and had never said anything, had never judged, had never treated him differently. Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my secret to tell. You had to be ready. And when you saw Sammy, you were ready. Bob looked at the 1,000th crane, the paper bird that represented everything, the struggle, the fall, the resurrection, the family they had built. Connie, you saved us all, Bob said, his voice cracking with emotion. Sammy, maybe even Lucy. You taught us that weakness isn't shame, that asking for help isn't failure, that sometimes the cure comes from unexpected places. Connie looked at the box of paper, almost empty now, but filled with memories. I didn't save you. You saved yourselves. I just gave you the paper, the hands that folded, the decisions you made. The courage you showed. That was all you. Sammy took the 1,000th crane. He hung it next to the other 999. A chain of paper birds that covered an entire wall. A monument to recovery. A reminder that there is always hope. If you're watching this and you have OCD, I want you to know something, Sammy said, as if speaking to an imaginary camera. You're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not alone. There are millions of people like you out there, and there are ways to improve. Not to cure it entirely, but to improve. To learn to live with it, to learn to control it, and instead of it controlling you. He paused, taking a breath. And if you know someone with OCD, don't judge them. Don't tell them to just stop doing it. It's not that easy. What you can do is be there, accompany them, listen, and maybe, just maybe, teach them how to fold an origami crane. Connie smiled, warmly. Because that's what we need, she said, softly. No sermons, no judgments, no pity, just someone who will sit beside us and remind us that we're not alone. Bob picked up a piece of paper from the box, a new one, the first of a new series. So let's start again, shall we? Crane number 1, of the next 1,000. Sammy laughed. A genuine sound. Should we go for 2,000? Why not? We've got our whole lives. And so, the 4 of them began to fold again, in silence, in peace, in family. A family that didn't share all the same blood, but shared something more valuable, shared struggle, shared understanding, shared love. This story doesn't have a perfect, happy ending, because life isn't perfect. Sammy still has OCD, he still has difficult days, he still has to fight. But he doesn't fight alone or who anymore. He has Bob, who understands, because he's lived it. He has Mary Ann, who learned to support him. He has Connie, who showed him that creation can conquer destruction. And he has 1,000 origami cranes that remind him every day that he can do it, that he always can. One fold at a time. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs it, someone who's struggling in silence, someone who believes they're alone, someone who needs to know that there is hope, because there's always hope. Sometimes it comes in the form of an origami crane, sometimes it comes in the form of a housekeeper who lost her son, sometimes it comes in the form of an uncle who finally talks about his secret. But it always comes. You just have to be willing to receive it. You just have to be willing to fold the first piece of paper. And the rest, like the cranes, is built one by one day at a time, one fold at a time, one hope at a time. This story has come to an end, but the message remains. Mental health isn't a shame. Asking for help isn't a weakness. And sometimes, the most powerful cure is as simple as a square of paper and someone who teaches you how to fold it. 1,000 cranes, 1,000 hopes, 1,000 reminders that you can always start again. Thank you for listening, and remember, your hands can destroy, but they can also create. The choice is yours. Choose to create. The end.